The galaxy was quiet. Too quiet. The Zorith War was finally over. After years of endless battles, burning skies, and dead worlds, the enemy had surrendered. Human fleets drifted back to their home sectors, scarred and weary, their ships carrying victory banners but also the weight of countless graves. To the galaxy, it was peace. To humanity, it felt like something else, something unfinished. The colonies bore the scars of fire. On Vela Prime, a city once glowing with lights was now a skeleton of steel and ash. Survivors gathered in the ruins, whispering in low voices about shadows behind the war. Some said the Zorith had been too well prepared, too precise in their strikes. They always seemed to know where human fleets would appear. They struck at supply lines just as ships arrived, bombed hidden bases no enemy should have known about. It was not chance. It was betrayal. The whispers grew into anger. Rumors spread through the stars. Traitors had walked among the Galactic Council itself. Leaders who had smiled and shaken hands with humanity in public had secretly sold them to the Zorith. In the darkness of his flagship, Resolute, Admiral Elias Cade read the latest report. His face, hardened by years of war, did not change as his eyes moved across the glowing text. The words were simple, but heavy enough to turn his victory into ash. The enemy knew our plans before every major battle. Someone fed them. Cade leaned back in his chair. Around him, the war room flickered with silent holomaps of dead battlefields. He could still see the wreckage of ships, human and alien, floating like tombstones in the void. The war had ended, but the silence that followed was not peace. It was the silence of something waiting. He rose and walked to the observation window. Stars stretched endlessly before him, their light cold and ancient. Yet all he could think of was the lives lost because someone, somewhere, had whispered human plans into alien ears. Billions dead. Entire colonies wiped out. Worlds poisoned. And maybe, just maybe, it had not been necessary. Behind him, Commander Ree Torres, his trusted second, stepped into the room. She carried no datapad, no official report. Just her eyes, sharp and tired. "You saw it," she said quietly. Cade nodded once. "I saw it." Torres clenched her jaw. "Then it's true. The Council, someone inside betrayed us." "Not just someone," Cade said. His voice was flat, but under the surface it carried steel. "More than one. No enemy fights with such precision without help." Silence hung between them. The Galactic Council had been the heart of the galaxy's unity. Dozens of species, seated together, sworn to peace after centuries of distrust. Humanity had fought beside them, bled beside them, died beside them. And yet, if the report was true, some of those same leaders had chosen survival through treachery. Cade turned back to the window. Peace cannot begin while traitors sit in their thrones. Torres studied him. "Then what do we do?" For a long moment, Cade said nothing. Outside the window, stars blinked like distant eyes watching. Finally, he answered, "We hunt them." On the ruined colonies, the whispers grew louder. Civilians spoke of ships that had disappeared mid-journey, convoys ambushed in places only council members knew. In hidden bunkers, survivors swore they had seen council transmissions just hours before Zorith fleets arrived. It was as if someone had lit a beacon for the enemy, guiding them to every weakness humanity had. Fear spread among the people, but fear quickly hardened into something sharper: anger. They had trusted the council. They had trusted the promise of unity. Now they trusted nothing. On Earth, crowds gathered outside the halls of government, demanding answers. News screens replayed endless footage of ruined worlds. Anchors spoke in hushed voices of betrayal, though none dared name names. Admiral Cade watched from his private chamber as the anger boiled across the stars. Humanity wanted truth. Humanity wanted justice. But most of all, humanity wanted blood. In the quiet hours of the night, Cade met with his closest officers aboard the Resolute. The room was dim, lit only by the blue glow of tactical maps. "This is not peace," he told them. His voice carried the weight of command, the weight of war. "This is unfinished work. The Zorith may be broken, but the traitors who fed them live among us still." Captain Dorn, A heavy-set man with scars across his face slammed a fist against the table. Then let's drag them out. Put them in chains and show the galaxy what happens to cowards. Others nodded, but Torres shook her head. We need proof. Without it, we are no better than the enemy. If we accuse the wrong people, we fracture what little peace remains. Cade raised his hand, silencing them. We will find proof. And when we do, there will be no mercy. The officers leaned forward, waiting. We will form a new division, Cade declared. Not a fleet of peacekeepers. Not diplomats. Hunters. Silent, unseen, until the traitors are exposed. Humanity does not forgive betrayal. A cold fire burned in the eyes of his officers. They knew what this meant. The war had not ended. It had simply changed shape. Cade looked at each of them in turn, his voice steady and final. Peace cannot begin until the traitors are found, and we will find them. Far across the stars, in the golden chambers of the Galactic Council, alien leaders toasted the end of the war. They smiled and spoke of rebuilding, of unity, of trust. But behind the smiles, shadows lingered. Some had secrets buried deep. Secrets written in encrypted transmissions. Secrets paid for in human blood. And in the silence between the stars, humanity had already begun the hunt. The war had ended, but the galaxy was restless. Human fleets lingered in orbit over broken colonies, their ships like silent sentinels against the stars. Supplies were being moved, survivors relocated, and dead buried. But beneath the surface, something darker was moving. Humanity had declared victory, but Admiral Cade knew it was a fragile illusion. The proof lay in a fractured message intercepted at the edge of the galaxy. It was not a normal transmission. Buried in old Zorith code, hidden between layers of corrupted data, lay fragments of words. Phrases like Council of Shadows and Promise Passage appeared, incomplete but dangerous. Someone had sent these messages during the war, using the chaos to cover their betrayal. Cade stood over the holo-table, staring at the decoded fragment projected before him. The words hovered like ghosts in the air. His officers waited in silence, each understanding what this meant. Torres finally broke it. This wasn't just one traitor. It's bigger. Cade nodded. A network. A council within the council. Dorn grunted. And we only found pieces. Imagine what's still hidden. The fragments hinted at more than betrayal. They hinted at organization. The Council of Shadows, if it truly existed, was not random. It was deliberate. A group of leaders who had chosen survival through betrayal, trading humanity's lives for their own power. But the fragments were incomplete. To prove anything, they needed more. Where do we start? Torres asked. Cade looked around the table. We start where they feel safe. A council world. A hush fell over the officers. To strike on a council world was no small step. The Galactic Council had declared all members immune from direct human aggression. Violating that would mean war, not against the Zorith, but against their supposed allies. Dorn leaned forward. You want us to break into the heart of the Council. Cade's voice was cold and clear. We're not at war with the Council. We're at war with its shadows. There's a difference. Days later, the Resolute slid into stealth mode, her engines barely a whisper in the void. The Hunt Division was born. A collection of hand-picked ships, each one commanded by officers loyal only to Cade. No politics, no distractions, just hunters. Their first target was Mirak Prime, a shining council world wrapped in rings of golden light. To the galaxy, Mirak was a beacon of diplomacy. To Cade, it was a nest of secrets. From orbit, Mirak looked untouched by the war. Towers of crystal reached into the sky. Fleets of merchant ships buzzed in and out of its harbors. It was peace, polished and false. But beneath the glittering surface lay something else. Hidden channels, secret vaults, and somewhere, someone who had sold humanity to the Zorith. On the ground, the Hunt Division moved like shadows. Torres led a squad through the Undercity, a place where Mirak's polished towers gave way to tunnels and darkness. Neon lights flickered, casting shadows on the walls. Alien merchants watched with cautious eyes, sensing danger in the humans' quiet movements. They weren't here to be seen. They were here to dig. And dig they did. Inside a sealed bunker, hidden beneath layers of false walls, they found it, a data core. Old, damaged, but still alive. Its files were locked, encrypted in alien codes that twisted and shifted like serpents. Torres connected the core to her wrist console. It's heavily shielded. They didn't want anyone seeing this. Cade's voice crackled through her earpiece from orbit. Break it. Whatever's in there is worth the risk. Minutes passed like hours as Torres fought through the codes. Her heart raced. Each failed attempt triggered defensive programs, flashes of static, false alarms, even automated lockdowns. Finally, with one last bypass, the screen cleared. Lines of text scrolled across her display. Her eyes widened. Cade, it's real. The Council of Shadows. Meeting records, payment logs, deals with Zorith generals. It's all here. Before she could transmit, alarms howled through the tunnels. Armed guards stormed into the chamber, weapons raised. The Merakians had been waiting. Drop the core, one shouted in his guttural tongue. Torres didn't move. She raised her rifle. Over my dead body. The room erupted in gunfire. Blasts of plasma lit the dark, echoing through the tunnels. The humans fought with grim precision, cutting down the guards one by one. But more poured in, drawn by the alarms. Torres slammed the core into her pack. Extraction. Now. Above, the Resolute launched drop shuttles into the night. The Hunt Division tore its way out of Merak's Undercity, fighting through waves of defenders until the sky opened above them. The core was theirs, but the cost was blood. Back aboard the flagship, the officers gathered once more around the holotable. Torres placed the core on the surface, its blue glow bathing their faces. It's more than we thought, she said quietly. Not one traitor. Dozens. Counselors, generals, ministers. They called themselves the Council of Shadows. They made deals with the Zorith, selling our positions in exchange for safety when the war ended. Cade stayed at the core. His reflection shimmered in its light. And they are still out there. Torres nodded, hiding behind their titles. Their immunity, smiling while billions lie in graves. Dorn spat on the floor. Then we dragged them out. Council or not. Cade raised his eyes, his voice ablaze. The war may be over for the galaxy, but for humanity, it is not finished. We will not rest. We will not forgive. The hunt begins here. Far away, on Merak Prime, leaders gathered in secret chambers, their hands trembling as they received word of the humans' raid. The data core was gone, their secrets stolen. The shadows stirred uneasily. For the first time, the hunters had found their trail, and humanity was coming. The galaxy thought the humans would stay quiet. They thought humanity would return to Earth, rebuild their colonies, and fade into the background of the Galactic Council. But the Hunt Division had already taken its first step on Merak Prime, and now they had proof the Council of Shadows was real. And proof demanded action. Admiral Elias Cade stood before his officers in the Resolute's war room. The stolen data core floated above the holotable, its blue glow casting ghostly light on every face. Names scrolled across the projection. Counselors, generals, ministers, traitors, all of them. At the top of the list was Councillor Verix of Duru, a respected leader known for his endless speeches about peace and diplomacy. To the galaxy, Verix was a voice of reason. To humanity, he was something else, a man who had sold human fleets to the Zorith in exchange for protecting his own world. Cade's voice was low, sharp, final. Councillor Verix is our first target. The mission began under the cover of darkness. The Hunt Division's fleet slipped into Dorian space without warning, their ships masked by stealth generators stolen from the Zorith during the war. Civilian traffic flowed freely through the system, unaware of the predators that now drifted among them. From orbit, Doria looked beautiful, a world of emerald oceans and golden continents, untouched by war. But beneath its shining towers, Verix sat in his palace, guarded by soldiers who thought his title made him untouchable. They were wrong. On the surface, the strike team moved like shadows. Commander Ree Torres led the squad through narrow alleys, their armor muted to absorb sound. Night rain fell in sheets, slicking the streets with silver. Alien citizens hurried past, not knowing that history was walking beside them. Torres gave a silent signal. The squad spread out, rifles raised. Ahead, the councilor's palace rose from the ground like a black tower, its walls lined with shimmering defense grids. Dorian guards in silver armor patrolled the gates. One of the squad whispered, "How do we break through that?" Torres checked her wrist console. "With fire." Seconds later, an explosion ripped through the west wall. Smoke and flame burst into the night as the squad charged forward, cutting down guards before alarms could even scream. The Hunt Division had arrived. Inside the palace, Councillor Varix was dragged from his chambers, his eyes wide with fury and fear. "You cannot touch me," he shouted, his voice trembling. "I am a councillor of the galaxy. I have immunity." Torres shoved him against the wall, her rifle pressed to his chest. "Immunity doesn't cover betrayal." Varix's lips curled in a snarl. "You don't understand. The Zorith would have crushed us all. My deals saved my people. If humanity had simply—" He choked on his words as Cade himself stepped into the chamber, rain dripping from his cloak. His eyes were cold, his voice colder. "Your deals killed billions of mine." Varix faltered, his mouth opening and closing like a drowning man. He searched for words but found none. The weight of Cade's gaze pinned him in silence. For a moment, the chamber was quiet except for the hiss of rain against shattered windows. Then Cade drew his sidearm. The shot was quick, final. Councillor Varix crumpled to the floor, the light gone from his eyes. The first traitor had fallen. By dawn, the news had spread across the galaxy. Every broadcast, every channel carried the same story. Humanity had stormed a councillor's palace and executed him without trial. Some called it justice. Others called it murder. On oath, crowds cheered in the streets. Families of the dead lifted banners that read "Never forgive" and "No more traitors." Humanity's rage had finally been given a target, and Admiral Cade was its hand. But in the chambers of the Galactic Council, chaos erupted. Councillors shouted over one another, demanding action. Some demanded sanctions against humanity. Others begged for calm, terrified of what the humans might do next. One alien minister hissed, "If they can kill Varix, they can kill any of us." The council speaker raised trembling hands. "We must bring humanity back into order. They cannot be allowed to act as judge, jury, and executioner." But deep down, none of them truly believed they could stop humanity. Not anymore. Aboard the Resolute, Cade listened to the council's protests broadcast across secure channels. His officers waited for his reaction. Torres folded her arms. "They are afraid." Cade's eyes never left the screen. "Good. Fear makes them careless." Dorn grinned grimly. "Who's next on the list?" The names still glowed on the holotable, dozens of them. Each one a traitor hiding behind their title. Each one living on borrowed time. Cade turned, his voice quiet but filled with iron. "The hunt has only begun." Far away, in hidden chambers across the galaxy, traitors whispered in panic. They had believed their secrets were safe, their deals buried under layers of lies. But now one of their own was dead, executed in his own palace by human hands. The Council of Shadows had been exposed, and they knew humanity was coming for them all. The galaxy shook after the fall of Councillor Varix. His execution was more than the death of one man. It was a message, carved in fire and blood. Humanity would not forgive betrayal. No immunity, no political shield, no ancient council tradition could protect traitors now. In the council chambers, the storm raged. Leaders shouted across the great hall, voices echoing against crystal walls. Some demanded that humanity be punished, expelled from the council, even attacked. Others, pale with fear, argued that provoking the humans further would only invite more bloodshed. "Varix was guilty," cried one minister. "The humans found proof. He made deals with the Zorith." "And what of the rest of us?" hissed another. "Will they come to our worlds next?" Guns blazing. The speaker slammed his staff against the floor, but the chamber did not fall silent. The truth hung over them like a shadow. The humans were hunting traitors, and no one knew how deep the rot truly went. In hidden rooms far from the council chamber, the real traitors panicked. The Council of Shadows had thought themselves untouchable. They had buried their tracks, erased transmissions, silenced witnesses. But the humans had found them anyway. "We cannot hold this line forever," muttered one cloaked figure, his alien features hidden in darkness. "If they reach the central archives, the entire conspiracy collapses." Another slammed his fist on the table. "Then erase the archives. Burn everything. Humanity cannot hunt what they cannot find." But even as they argued, humanity's hunters were already closing in. Aboard the Resolute, Admiral Elias Cade studied the stolen data core again. His officers gathered around, their faces lit by its pale glow. "The more we pull from this," said Commander Reed Torres, "the worse it gets. These aren't isolated deals. This was organized, planned." Names scrolled across the display. Not just counselors, but generals, intelligence officers, governors of entire colonies. The Zorith hadn't simply fought a war. They had woven a web of lies through the very heart of the Council. Cade's jaw tightened. How many worlds did we lose because of this? Torres hesitated. Too many. The evidence painted a grim picture. Convoys ambushed because someone whispered their routes. Human fleets slaughtered because traitors gave away their positions. Even the fall of New Corinth, a colony reduced to glass and ash, had been marked on a council map days before the Zorith struck. It wasn't war. It was betrayal, led like poison. Captain Dorn Spatacaris. They sold us piece by piece, and still sit on their thrones. Cade's eyes narrowed. Not for long. But the hunt was not without danger. That night, as the Resolute drifted in stealth above a barren moon, a coded transmission cut through their encrypted channels. It was a warning, sent by an anonymous source deep inside the Council. "You are being watched. The shadows move faster than you think. They are already covering their tracks. Be careful whom you trust." The crew exchanged uneasy looks. Torres frowned. "If they are baiting evidence, we could lose the only chance to expose them." "Then we move faster," Cade said. His voice was hard, but his thoughts were sharper. If the shadows had agents inside the Council, then even the allies humanity still had might be compromised. Every step of the hunt would be met with lies, traps, and knives in the dark. 2 weeks later, a convoy of human scouts intercepted transmissions from a remote archive world. Encrypted data was being deleted in massive bursts. Records, communications, old war logs. Cade ordered the Hunt Division to strike. The fleet descended like silent predators, engines barely whispering. Drop shuttles punched through the sky, landing outside a vast data vault carved into the mountains. Torres led the assault. Her squad blasted through defenses, fighting against guards loyal not to truth, but to shadows. Plasma fire lit the night. Towers collapsed. The mountain itself shook as humans forced their way into the vault. Inside, rows of glowing servers stretched endlessly. Files burned away one after another, vanishing into nothing. Torres shouted over the alarms. "They're erasing everything." Her team raced through the aisles, hacking into terminals, yanking power conduits, pulling storage cores free before they could be wiped. Each second was a battle against the erasure. Finally, with sparks flying and alarms screaming, they ripped the main core from its socket. The deletion stopped. The vault fell silent. Another piece of the web had been captured. When the Hunt Division returned to orbit, Cade examined the new data. It was worse than before. This archive held not only names, but instructions. A blueprint of betrayal. The Shadows had built networks in secret, feeding the Zorith at every turn, always one step ahead of humanity. Worse still, the files revealed orders issued after the war's end. The traitors weren't retreating. They were preparing for something new. Cade's voice was grim as he spoke to his officers. "They are not done. They are planning their return." Torres whispered the words that hung in every mind. The war never truly ended. In the council chambers, whispers spread like fire. Humanity had struck another world, stolen another archive, uncovered more secrets. Alien leaders asked themselves the same question in silence. How many of us are guilty? How many of us are next? Fear rippled through the council like cracks in glass. Allies turned suspicious of one another. Fingers pointed in every direction. No one was safe. The Council of Shadows had built their web carefully, But now the strands were unraveling, and every strand humanity pulled only tightened the noose. Far away, in a hidden chamber, the traitors gathered once more. "The humans are closing in," one whispered. "Varix is dead. The archives are gone. Soon they will have names, all of them." Another leaned forward, his voice sharp as a blade. "Then we set a trap. Let them come. We will bury the hunters in their own blood." In the darkness, the shadows prepared their next move. The web had been revealed, but it was not broken yet. Admiral Cade walked into the massive chamber of the Galactic Council. The dome above shimmered with starlight, projected from satellites orbiting the planet. Every seat in the circle was filled. Alien leaders, diplomats, and human representatives sat shoulder to shoulder. The war was over, but the air was heavy, like a storm waiting to break. Cade wasn't supposed to be here. Admirals did not usually stand in the council chamber, but whispers of betrayal had forced his hand. He carried a datapad in his grip, its surface flickering with encrypted files, evidence that would shake the galaxy. The council speaker, an elder from the Salary race, tapped the floor with his staff. "This meeting begins. We gather not as enemies, but as survivors of war. Let us honor peace." Peace. The word hung in the air, fragile, almost mocking. Cade's jaw tightened. He remembered the screams of dying ships, the human fleets ambushed again and again. He remembered the thousands of names carved into memorial walls. Peace without justice meant nothing. The speaker turned his many eyes toward Cade. "Admiral, you asked for the floor. Speak quickly. Time is precious." Cade stepped forward. His voice cut through the silence. "The war ended with Zorith defeat. Humanity fought with honor. But there is something you are not saying, something you are hiding. The Zorith knew our fleet movements before every major battle. That was no accident. That was betrayal." The chamber stirred. Murmurs echoed across the circle. Several alien leaders exchanged sharp glances. Others looked away, uncomfortable. Cade pressed on. "I hold proof. Transmissions sent from this chamber. Coded messages that warned the Zorith fleet where to strike. Entire colonies burned because of those leaks. Millions dead because someone in this council chose treachery over unity." He raised the datapad. Holograms flared to life above the chamber. Logs of intercepted messages, each tagged with council signatures. The evidence burned in the air, undeniable. Chaos erupted. Some delegates shouted in denial. Others rose from their seats, accusing one another. The chamber that once spoke of peace now roared like a battlefield. The council speaker slammed his staff. "Order. There must be order." But there was no order. Fear spread like fire. Everyone saw what Cade had shown. Betrayal came from within their highest circle. No one could trust anyone. A tall, cold voice broke through the noise. "This is a human trick." It came from Chancellor Vena of the Drakari Alliance, a race once close allies of humanity. His reptilian eyes glared at Cade. "You bring forged data to poison the council. You want to divide us after the war." Cade met his gaze. "I wish it was false. But too many of my people are dead. I will not allow lies to bury them." Vena's lip curled. "Careful, Admiral. You accuse the council itself. You accuse me." Cade didn't blink. "If you are guilty, yes." Gasps filled the chamber. This was no longer diplomacy. It was confrontation. The council speaker leaned forward. "Admiral Cade, what do you want?" Cade's voice was steady. "I want the truth. Humanity demands it. We will not rest until every traitor is unmasked. If the council cannot deliver justice, then humanity will find its own way." Silence fell again. Heavy, dangerous. Behind the speaker, shadows shifted. Guards, armored in silver, stepped closer, weapons low but ready. Cade noticed. He was not welcome here. The datapad in his hand was both his shield and his death sentence. Then a quiet message crackled in his ear. His comms officer, hidden outside the chamber. "Admiral, coded intercept just came through. Another message sent to surviving Zorith cells. It's happening now, from inside the council building." Cade's blood ran cold. The betrayal wasn't in the past. It was still alive. The traitors were not done. They were feeding enemies even now, during this very session. He stared around the chamber, at the faces of leaders who called themselves guardians of peace. Which one was smiling too calmly? Which one was hiding the dagger? The speaker tried to move the session to silence, but the damage was done. The council was fractured. Cade lowered his datapad. His voice, low but dangerous, filled the chamber. The war may be over, but humanity's hunt has only begun. The council chamber was no longer a hall of unity. It was a nest of snakes, and Admiral Cade stood in the middle. Every gaze was sharp, every word heavy. He had just told them the betrayal was not history. It was happening now. A transmission had left the building minutes ago. That meant someone in this very room was still feeding Zorith survivors. The council speaker's voice trembled as he spoke. "Explain yourself, Admiral." Cade raised the datapad again. His comms officer outside the chamber had already begun decrypting the new signal. The holograms updated, glowing above the circle of delegates. Coordinates appeared: secret human fleet routes, scheduled patrols, supply chains. And attached to them was a council clearance code. Cade's eyes narrowed. He recognized it instantly. "Counselor Reldar, these are your codes." Gasps filled the chamber. Reldar, a tall insectoid diplomat from the Krell Dominion, froze in his seat. His wings twitched, his mandibles clicked nervously. For weeks he had spoken the loudest about peace, about moving forward. Now his face betrayed him. Shaking, sweating, caught. Reldar stood, hissing. "Lies! Human tricks! This is false data planted to destroy me." But the datapad glowed again, this time with a recorded voice intercept. Reldar's voice. Clear, calm, giving coordinates, giving death orders. The chamber exploded in chaos. Delegates shouted, guards raised weapons, and the speaker pounded his staff in vain. Cade didn't move. His voice cut through the storm. "How much did they pay you, Reldar? How many colonies burned for your profit?" Reldar's black eyes darted around. He knew he was finished. But cornered traitors don't beg, they strike. With a sudden screech, Reldar lunged across the floor, pulling a concealed plasma blade from his robes. Guards shouted, but he was fast. His blade arced toward Cade's chest. Cade twisted, barely dodging. The blade cut the air inches from him, sizzling. The council chamber erupted in panic, delegates fleeing to the walls. A human security officer burst through the doors, blaster raised. The shot echoed like thunder. Reldar fell to the ground, his body smoking. The traitor was dead, but the silence that followed was worse than the fight. Cade looked down at the corpse. One traitor unmasked. But how many more? Reldar hadn't worked alone. No one could leak so much alone. The speaker's voice cracked. This changes everything. If the Krell Dominion harbored traitors. Cade cut him off. Not just the Krell. There are others. Reldar was only the first to fall. Humanity will keep digging until the rest are found. Around the chamber, leaders shifted uncomfortably. Cade saw fear in their eyes, not just fear of exposure, but fear of humanity itself. The war had ended, but humans were not returning to weakness. They were hunters now, relentless, unwilling to forgive betrayal. Cade spoke one last time before leaving the chamber. His words were not loud, but they echoed in every ear. The galaxy thought the war ended with Zorith. But for humanity, the real war begins here, inside these walls. He turned and walked out, datapad in hand, soldiers at his back. Behind him, the council chamber descended into shouts, accusations, and fear. The shadows of betrayal stretched wide, and for the first time in galactic history, the council trembled before mankind. The corridors of the council building shook with arguments and fear. Word of Reldar's death spread fast. Guards whispered, diplomats locked themselves in chambers, and the galaxy's fragile peace teetered on the edge of collapse. Admiral Cade knew Reldar had not acted alone. The leaks had been too precise, too constant. A bigger hand had guided them, someone with reach far beyond one insectoid traitor. In the war room beneath the council chamber, Cade and his officers studied the last transmissions. Each signal had been routed through decoys, masked with clever tricks. But now, with Reldar's personal codes broken, The true source could be traced. The final decrypt came through. A name appeared. Cade's heart clenched. It wasn't some minor counselor. It wasn't a weak diplomat selling scraps. It was Chancellor Vena of the Drakari Alliance, the same one who had accused Cade of lies in front of everyone. Vena had been humanity's ally during the war, sitting at their side, offering counsel, even sharing fleets at times. But all along, he had been feeding the Zorith their moves, making sure humanity bled while his own empire stayed untouched. Cade slammed a fist onto the table. It was him all along. He used Reldai as a puppet, but the hand was always his. The officers looked at him, waiting. Cade's voice was cold. "We end this tonight." The council reconvened in emergency session. The chamber was tense, half empty, shadows filling the gaps where frightened leaders had fled. Chancellor Vena sat tall, scales shining under the chamber lights. He looked calm, too calm, as if he already knew the storm was coming. The speaker's voice was weary. "Admiral Cade, you requested the floor again. Make your case." Cade stepped forward. His datapad glowed once more, casting a pale light across his face. "We found the truth. Reldar was no mastermind. He was a pawn. The real traitor sits here before us." The hologram shifted. Transmission logs filled the air, encrypted routes, signed with Reldar's code, but each file traced back to one route clearance. A highest signature. "Chancellor Vena," Cade said, his voice cutting through the silence. "You betrayed the galaxy. You betrayed humanity. You gave the Zorith our fleets, our lives. Millions are dead because of you." The chamber exploded with shock. Voices shouted, accusations flew, guards rushed forward. But Vena only laughed. A deep, cold laugh that silenced the room. "Humans, always so dramatic. You think you won the war? No, I won it. While you burned, my fleets grew stronger. While you died, my empire thrived. The Zorith were useful tools. And when you destroyed them, I stood untouched." His eyes glowed with pride. "You should thank me. I made sure humanity bled enough to fear me forever." Cade's jaw tightened. He didn't reply with words. He raised his hand. At once, hidden human soldiers in the chamber stepped from the shadows, weapons trained on Vena. The Chancellor's smile faltered. "You dare? In this chamber?" Cade's voice was steel. "Justice is not bound by your walls." Vena hissed, leaping from his seat. In one swift move, he drew a plasma pistol hidden beneath his robes. He fired. Blue fire lit the chamber. But Cade was faster. His soldiers unleashed a volley of precise shots. The sound cracked like thunder, echoing off the chamber walls. Vena's body fell hard, smoke rising from his chest. The council froze in silence. The mastermind was dead. Cade looked around at the stunned faces of alien leaders. His voice rang like iron across the chamber. "Let this be clear. Humanity does not forget betrayal. The war ended, but our hunt continues. If there are others like him, we will find you. No shadow will hide you. No council will protect you." No one spoke. No one moved. For the first time, the entire council feared humanity, not as weak newcomers, not as expendable soldiers, but as hunters who could never be deceived again. Cade turned and walked from the chamber, boots echoing against the floor. Behind him, whispers grew. The galaxy had changed forever. The Zorith War had ended, but a new age had begun. An age where humanity's eyes watched the stars, not for enemies beyond, but for traitors within. And Admiral Cade vowed, they will all be found.